Harold asked aggressively. Just because you two can still get the invitation letter? Where did it come from? Charlie glanced at him and said indifferently, Harold, where did our invitation letter come from? What does it matter to you? Harold sneered and said, as for the two of you, how can you get the invitation letter from the Song family? I think you guys stole someone else's invitation letter and got in here, right? Charlie didn't bother to pay attention to him, turned his head, and said nothing. His ignorant attitude made Harold even angrier. In his eyes, Charlie is mere rubbish. He has no status at all in the Wilson family. He is an inferior person. And now, Charlie can also come to Treasure Pavilion, which makes Harold feel very humiliated. An inferior person who eats leftovers, why stand here side by side with him? Harold stared at Charlie, pointed at his nose, and said, Say, how did you two get in here? Charlie frowned and said to Jacob, Dad, don't care about this kind of brain damage, let's go, don't care about him. Stop. Harold stepped forward, deliberately blocking him, staring provocatively. You still want to run, are you guilty? You must have used shameless means to get in. You are not qualified to enter this high-end occasion! Exclamation mark. Show me your invitation letter. Charlie was also angry, even though he tolerated step by step. It was impossible for the opponent to provoke again and again. He said coldly, Look at my invitation letter? You are not worthy. Get out. Harold frowned, and anger rushed to his forehead. In his eyes, Charlie has always been a mediocre wimp. Dare to let him go. Harold grabbed Charlie's arm, and said coldly, If you don't speak clearly today, won't let you leave. Harold shot quickly, but Charlie easily avoided. Afterward, he clasped Harold's wrist with his backhand, shook it lightly, and sneered in his mouth. What? The injury on your hand is healed? When the scar is over, I forgot the pain? Harold suddenly felt a huge force coming, and he couldn't help taking 2 steps backward, feeling angry and shocked in his heart. This kid's hand strength is not low. Knowing that it is not Charlie's opponent, Harold cursed coldly, D*MN. You rubbish, wait for me, I will ask the manager to kick you out now. With that, Harold turned his head and shouted at the manager on the side. Soon, a middle-aged man in a suit and leather shoes walked quickly, with 2 security guards behind him. This middle-aged man was very popular and smiled at Harold. Mr. Wilson, what's your order? Manager, check their invitation letter. Harold pointed his finger at Charlie and said disdainfully, I suspect that their invitation letter is fake. For the privacy of guests, each invitation letter does not include the guest's name, only a string of passwords. Enter the password into the software in the phone to find out the names of the participants. When the manager saw Harold's luxurious clothes, he knew that he was the child of a wealthy family. Looking back at Charlie, he wore ordinary clothes. He smiled contemptuously and said to Charlie, Please show me the invitation letter and I will check it. Although he was polite, there was a trace of contempt in his eyes. Because Charlie wears ordinary clothes, from the outside, he doesn't look like a distinguished guest who can enter the Treasure Pavilion. Charlie also felt the contemptuous look in the opponent's eyes, and couldn't help but feel angry, and said coldly, What if I don't? The manager gave a dry cough, his eyes fell cold, and continued to ask, Then dare you to ask which family are you in Orus Hill City? Before Charlie could speak, Harold said first, He is a member of our Wilson family. No, he is a live-in son-in-law of our Wilson family. In fact, he is not worthy of being a child of the Wilson family. At best, he is a dog of ours. The 4 words, live-in son-in-law, made the manager guess 7 or 8 points. How could a person with status in Orus Hill City become a son-in-law? The manager's face sank, and he said, Let's talk about it, how did you get in? Faced with the scrutiny of this group of people, Charlie was already impatient in his heart, and he was also disappointed at Treasure Pavilion's behavior of dividing the guests into different classes. He said coldly, Of course I walked in. The manager knew that Charlie's status was humble, and he stopped probing and said coldly, If you don't follow the rules and hand in the invitation letter to me for inspection, then I have to ask you to go out. After he finished speaking, he waved his hand, and the 2 security guards immediately stepped forward and circled Charlie with eyes. When Jacob saw this posture, he suddenly panicked. He was afraid that there was a problem with the invitation letter, so he hurriedly said to Charlie, "Charlie, I think we should avoid trouble, and go back quickly." Charlie frowned, and asked a little unexpectedly, "Dad, are you not going to watch the auction?" Jacob shook his head and said, "I won't go anymore. We shouldn't have come to this kind of place. If we are kicked out in a while, it won't look good." Charlie nodded when he saw that the old man had already decided, and he didn't speak anymore. He nodded and took Jacob out. It was just an auction, and he is not here to attend it. Since the old master didn't want to attend, then he didn't need to stay here and pester these people. As for Warnya, if she asks about it, he will just say, "Your Song family's place, I'm afraid I can't afford it." Afterward, he turned and left with the old master. Harold laughed presumptuously behind him. "Ha ha ha, 2 rags, are you scared? A guilty conscience? Even dare to enter the auction of the Song family, really looking for death?" Charlie ignored him and walked out. At this moment, the crowd suddenly burst into an uproar.